The touching moment my sister offered a bread basket while her kids enjoyed $100 meals. Tom watched, his heart heavy, as his sister Emily passed around golden, flaky bread in a basket. Every child's face lit up with joy, their delighted giggles echoing around the dining room. But here he was, with his own barely touched plate, watching the table transform into a display of culinary opulence that felt like a sting against his relentless aspirations. Bread won't fill them, he thought bitterly, yet he couldn't push the irony out of his mind. He had dedicated his life to creating incredible meals, but here he was, invisible amidst the feast. The silverware glimmered under the warm light like reminders of everything he had yet to accomplish. Emily's kids, oblivious to the soaring costs of their extravagant meals, eagerly tore the bread apart, and a pang of resentment twisted inside Tom. Was he envious of their carefree consumption, of the thriving future Emily had built for herself and her family, while he simmered in his middle-class kitchen, struggling for a flicker of validation? He shifted in his chair, eyes narrowing as he tipped the wineglass to his lips, allowing the warmth to mix with a growing unease. Around the table, laughter exploded like champagne, while Tom's insides churned. When did we become this? He questioned the room. He felt smaller beside Emily, who effortlessly juggled her promotions and parties while he lived in the shadows of his culinary ambitions. Every "are you still cooking?" tossed his way felt like another reminder of his stalled progress, which was almost too painful to acknowledge. Their childhood dreams spent together now felt reductive. He was still grasping at the apron strings while she had flown free. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension escalated as he glanced around, his internal rage barely contained. He could see Emily proudly serving her children, each bite they took as layered with flavor as her success. What did it mean to be fulfilled, anyway? Tom's fingers drummed against the table, rising frustration bubbling beneath his skin. He felt small but simmering, a pressure cooker ready to boil over. "Why do you only serve them bread?" he blurted out, his voice sharp enough to cut through the laughter, immediately drawing all eyes onto him. Emily blinked, caught off guard, and 1,000 conflicting emotions swirled in Tom's mind. Anger for himself, disbelief that he shouted his thoughts aloud, and the thrill of finally voicing his frustrations. The conversation exploded into a clash of voices. "You don't understand," Emily shouted back, her face flushed from the sudden shift. "You think it's easy? You think the success is handed to me on a silver platter?" Their words ricocheted around the dining room, mixing with the remnants of bitter resentment and reminders of the past. As they argued, Tom faced an impossible truth. Emily's success was nothing more than a portrait of their shared sacrifices. Each exquisite cuisine she trusted him to master felt like a betrayal, a daunting reminder of everything he had yet to conquer. Was he dreaming too big, too small? Or was he simply too scared to confront the reality of their differences? With every indignation launched across the table, the chasm between them widened, leaving him gasping for breath, struggling for clarity in the storm brewing between siblings. And as eyes shifted and whispers hung heavy in the air, Tom realized the confrontation could either fracture their bond or ignite a greater understanding, a burdensome dilemma remaining unresolved. A deep ache nested within him as he wrestled with the essence of what it meant to succeed. Tom stood motionless, the aftershocks of the argument still reverberating in his mind. The laughter around the table faded into the background as he processed the weight of his words. Each expression on Emily's face etched deeper into his consciousness, a mixture of hurt, disbelief, and something he might not have wanted to admit was anguish. Suddenly, his role as the supportive brother felt like an absurd mask that had slipped away. He had always seen himself in the kitchen, spoiling those he loved with meals crafted from his passion. But tonight, seated as an observer, envious of Emily's success, it felt as if he were forsaking his own identity. The contrast was striking. While Emily basked under soft golden light, he sat in a shadow of his own making. The resentment transformed slowly into something more unsettling, a realization that they had both sought validation, but had different means of achieving it. Tom excused himself from the table, the clinking of silverware echoing as his footsteps faded down the hallway. The living room felt suffocating, filled with reminders of family photos where smiles were untainted by rivalry or regret. He couldn't ignore it any longer. Each framed moment captured a version of him, a joyous child, a carefree teen, as if to mock the reality of an adult suspended in indecision. With a subtle resolve, he plopped down on the couch. Perhaps this was a moment he needed to address rather than escape. He felt compelled to write, to get it all down. The echoes of laughter from the dining room faded as he grabbed a pen and paper. What was hidden behind his culinary dreams? Was it fear of failure or a desire bigger than himself? Each flick of the pen felt liberating, revealing a cascade of thoughts and emotions he had buried deep within. He scribbled, "Why not me? Why not now?" The words felt like a confession, an admission that he could no longer afford to hide behind Emily's success or a fear of confrontation. This was a chance, an opportunity to step away from the shadows and chart a path toward his own vision. He could redefine what success meant to him. A vision of a new menu began to take shape in his mind, rich with spices and daring flavors. This could be the first step toward his dream of culinary recognition. But somewhere amid this personal revolution, he puzzled over Emily's challenge. Was navigating the delicate balance between love and ambition the truest test of character? Returning towards the dining room, Tom felt a flurry of determination stir within him. He would not merely confront Emily, but also confront himself, test their relationship, and redefine his aspirations. As he stepped back into the light, arms steady, he knew that the next conversation would not only need honesty, but vulnerability. "Emily," he began, his voice steadier than before, "I want to explore what being successful means for both of us. Maybe we could challenge each other instead of competing." The air hung thick with unspoken words, a bridge of understanding waiting to be built. But before Emily could respond, Tom felt something shift within, a fear and thrill intermingling in anticipation of what lay ahead. Would this be a breakthrough or the beginning of a more complex conflict? In that charged moment, Tom realized he was at a crossroads, teetering between comfort and the unpredictable road of growth. Whether the outcome, one dread hovered. Would the risk expose true intentions or deepen the divide? The silence stretched, pulling taut as if the whole world awaited Emily's response. Her eyes searched Tom's face for signals, and in that moment he felt exposed, raw and unprotected. The vulnerability he'd summoned felt like either a powerful ally or a dangerous foe, and he wrestled internally with whether sharing his aspirations would unravel their family dynamic or create a new, stronger bond. Emily took a breath, the kind that could lead to revelation or denial. "Tom, I didn't realize you felt this way." Her voice was soft, layered with uncertainty. "I thought you were happy." "Happy?" Tom interrupted, the words spilling out like an untamed fire. "I've been running on autopilot. I've let my fear hold me back while I've watched you soar." The light that illuminated Emily appeared dimmer now under the weight of Tom's confession. Her own path had driven her into her career with fierce determination, while he had drifted too comfortably in her shadow. It was a role he hadn't fully acknowledged until now, yet it was no longer sustainable. Tom, I never wanted you to feel less than, Emily replied, an edge of frustration lacing her tone. We're siblings. We're supposed to lift each other up. He noticed the tension in her brow, mirroring his own internal struggles. Was it too late to turn back? Every word felt like an invitation to an open wound, yet there was also a flicker of hope. Perhaps this raw honesty could help them both evolve. As Tom searched for his next words, he felt a familiar falling sensation, as if he were about to make a leap into the unknown. What if we help each other then? What if we set goals together? You've had the courage to chase after what you want, and I've been too afraid to even try. The invitation for collaboration hung in the air, a potential lifeline for both of them. Emily's eyes softened, contemplating the potential of shared ambition. You'd actually want to work together, despite everything? Her cautious question held a note of curiosity, as if the possibility was both intriguing and terrifying. Absolutely. I think we could inspire one another instead of competing, he responded earnestly, feeling the weight of his aspirations press against the reality of familial ties. I've been thinking about developing a new menu concept, something bold, and I need someone to hold me accountable. This openness granted Emily an avenue to discuss her own ambitions, the fear she harbored despite her exterior confidence. That could be amazing. I've been wondering about developing a community outreach program through my work, something connecting local farms with our culinary initiatives. The mutual recognition sparked a new flame in Tom's mind, threads of creativity intertwining like ingredients in a rich dish. They had left behind the bitterness of rivalry and straddled the line into collaboration. But who would take the first step? Would the collaboration be genuine or an attempt to remedy their fractured relationship through professional avenues? Tension still lingered, threading through the air. This kind of partnership would require them to be raw and open, two things Tom had historically struggled with. The notion of vulnerability loomed large as he mentally challenged his comfort levels. Emily suddenly leaned forward, her expression shifting. What if we started with a project together, like a dinner event, showcasing what we each bring to the table? It could be a test of our collaboration. Tom felt his heart race, but this was no longer propelled by fear. It was ignited by possibility. Sure, but let's make it unique. Let's pay homage to our childhood meals with a fresh twist. As ideas flowed back and forth, the initial fear of confrontation morphed into excitement, albeit subtly tainted with the residue of doubt. Tom questioned silently whether he could live up to the demands of such a collaboration and not falter again. I guess we'll have to push each other, Emily said. Are you willing to take that risk? With adrenaline coursing through him, Tom finally nodded. Together then. As they began to carve out their plan and share recipes, he felt the weight lift ever so slightly. But within him simmered the fear that revealing his entire self, ambitions and flaws alike, might lead to truths neither was prepared to face. I guess we'll have to push each other, Emily said. Are you willing to take that risk? With adrenaline coursing through him, Tom finally nodded. Together then. As they began to carve out their plan and share recipes, he felt the weight lift ever so slightly. But within him simmered the fear that revealing his entire self, ambitions and flaws alike, might lead to truths neither was prepared to face. In that interlude of hope and trepidation, a question arose that loomed over them both. Could authenticity survive within the crucible of their renewed partnership, or would their past insecurities return to haunt them? With a newfound resolve, Tom vowed to embrace this challenge, even if it meant exposing even deeper layers of himself. And as they began conceptualizing their first event, he couldn't help but wonder, what if their contrasting paths revealed something unforeseen, a truth about themselves neither had anticipated? The kitchen felt alive, a whirlwind of scents and sounds as Tom and Emily set to work. It was the kind of chaotic energy that ignited inspiration. Pots bubbled, spices mingled in the air, and laughter punctuated the sharp clinks of knives against cutting boards. Still, an undercurrent of anxiety gnawed at him like an unreadable recipe, a sense that discovery would not only come from their collaboration, but also from the uncharted territories of fear and vulnerability that lay ahead. Tom paused as he carefully sliced through the fragrant herbs, his mind swirling with possibilities. What kind of menu could truly reflect their shared experiences? What if they created something that was a homage not just to their culinary upbringing, but to their newfound partnership? He needed to harness the strength of their joint efforts while confronting the memories that shaped them. "What do you think about featuring elements from Mom's recipes?" he suggested, not entirely aware of how words might hang in the air and stir long-held emotions. Emily tensed momentarily, her eyes assessing the proposition. "But we need to make sure we honor her cooking style while still adding our flair. That's the only way we can make this feel genuine." He was struck by her straightforwardness and the firmness in her voice, recognizing that their collaboration would require not just creativity, but also honesty. The fear of picking at old wounds lingered, but something deeper urged him to embrace those memories with a sense of courage. "What if we let our past experiences shape the menu?" Tom ventured, feeling a surge of authenticity. "We could each choose a dish that represents a pivotal moment in our childhood and interpret it in a new way." Emily's expression shifted, her brow relaxing as the idea took root. "I like that. It presses us to draw from our deeper connections rather than just using nostalgia as a facade." As the evening wore on, they slipped into a rhythm, sharing more than just ingredients and culinary techniques. They exchanged stories that had remained unspoken for too long. Tom revealed how he had always felt eclipsed by Emily's achievements, a shadow forgotten in a sunlit room. Emily listened, her demeanor shifting from sisterly curiosity to genuine concern. "You've never really shared that with me, have you? I always thought you just didn't care about being in the spotlight." "Maybe I didn't have the courage," he admitted, the confession almost feeling like a cleansing breath. "I always worried my ambitions weren't enough, or that stepping out from under your light would just expose more flaws." Her gaze softened, and he saw the acknowledgement reflected in her eyes, a flicker of understanding built on their shared histories. "Tom, stepping out means being willing to fail, but it also means you get to define what success looks like for you, not through my lens." His heart raced. Had he always been so ignorant of his own potential? The admission felt like an impetus, stirring something deep within him, an awakening to the possibilities he had overlooked. As they finalized their dish choices, the conversation took an even more serious turn. Emily suggested they include a talk to shed light on the recipe's backgrounds during the event, allowing them to unveil the personal stories woven into their dishes. Tom felt a tightening knot in his stomach. Would this expose too much? Was he ready to reveal the vulnerabilities that accompanied those cherished memories? "Do you think we should?" he asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Emily met his eyes, unyielding and earnest. "We have to. That's how we pull in our audience. It's not just the food, it's the connection we share with it." Boldness surged within him, but it was accompanied by the pang of fear, an acute awareness that vulnerability would lead him to reveal pieces of himself he had tucked away for far too long. Yet, as they stood there, he realized he was more than a cook fixated on shadows. He was a creator prepared to transform personal narratives into the central spice of their collaboration. With resolve solidifying in his chest, Tom nodded. "Let's do it. Let's show them who we are." As they settled down for the night, energy buzzing with new ideas, the questions loomed larger. Would they inspire others by bearing their truths, or would the past rise to swallow them whole? What dark corners of their experiences awaited recognition? In that moment of resolve and uncertainty, Tom felt the flicker of something even more profound, self-discovery. And with it came the realization that amidst the struggles, transformation was brewing. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, warm and inviting, yet Tom felt the chill of anticipation settle around him. The air held a tangible tension, a mix of excitement and dread as he prepared to delve deeper into the memories that shaped him and Emily. They had agreed to share their stories along with their dishes, and he wrestled with the implications of such vulnerability. He began chopping vegetables, each slice punctuating his inner thoughts. What would he share? As the knife met the cutting board, he recalled the flavors that marked his childhood, timeless recipes mothers carry, secrets woven in every ingredient. This wasn't just about food, it was about revealing the man behind the apron. "What will you say about your dish?" Emily's voice broke through his reverie. Tom paused, considering her question. "I think I want to share about the time Mom taught me how to make her famous lasagna. It was chaotic, but it was our thing. It brought us together." There was a weight in his words that surprised him. Opening up felt as daunting as serving a poorly executed dish. Emily nodded, with a knowing smile. "Your love for that dish is evident, and the story matters. It's authentic." Her affirmation stirred something inside him. If Emily could approach this with such conviction, perhaps he could summon the will to confront his own insecurities too. He needed courage not just to share his narrative, but to embrace it wholly. While they worked side by side, he observed her peel and dice, planning how to craft her story around the flavors that adorned her own childhood. It struck him how easily they flowed together in the kitchen, but outside of it, they often drifted into unsaid complexities. "What about your dish?" he asked, aiming to further the conversation. Emily took a deep breath, her gaze drifting away momentarily, lost in memory. "I think I'll showcase the apple pie Grandma used to bake. It's a little bittersweet," she added, a slight quiver in her voice. "Every slice reminds me of her stories, especially the ones about dreams unfulfilled." He could see her wrestle with emotions as they surfaced, raw and unfiltered. It inspired him. Here they were embracing their pasts, yet daring to expose the scars that accompanied their experiences. "What if we help each other through that?" he proposed, sensing the opportunity for deeper connection. "Let's do it in front of the audience." The suggestion hung there, heavier than expected. "You mean share the stories together?" "Yeah," he replied, the idea gaining momentum. "If we take turns, we can build a dialogue that complements our dishes. It'll show the real connection." Emily held his gaze, weighing the proposition, then finally nodded. "You're right. It's more powerful to share it side by side. We can portray how those flavors shaped not just our cooking, but who we are." The thrill of collaboration surged within him again, but deeper questions lurked. Would she be able to confront the vulnerabilities accompanying her pie? And would he have the strength to share the shadows of his own existence while standing in the spotlight? As they continued their preparations, every sizzling sound and fragrant aroma felt charged with significance. He could sense the walls he had built starting to shake, the foundations of his hesitance cracking under the pressure of his aspirations. But what if that meant exposing not just his insecurities, but also his deepest desires, to be seen? His heart raced, excitement intertwining with anxiety, the thrill of newfound ambition meeting the fear of exposure. This collaboration was pushing them both, shaping them into something new, something vulnerable yet resilient. "Tom," Emily's voice tethered him back to the moment. "What happens if this doesn't go as planned?" The question hovered in the air, heavy with implications. Uncertainty gnawed at him again, and he hesitated. "I suppose if it doesn't work out the way we hope, at least we'll know we tried." "Exactly. We're defined not just by our successes, but how we respond to failure. It's part of the journey," she replied, and he felt the urgency of that realization resonate in his chest. With each passing moment, they both felt the weight of this project, this unveiling. Would they stand firm in their truths, or would they be swept away by the fear of failure? Tom clenched his fists, embracing the emotional turmoil, a paradox of bravery and vulnerability. Distant sounds of laughter floated from outside, reminding him there were people waiting to hear their stories. And as he focused on the chaotic simplicity of his tasks, he realized the moment was dawning, one that could redefine them both. But even as that resolve crystallized into determination, Tom couldn't shake the question lingering at the back of his mind. What if this journey of honesty uncovered more than they were ready to confront? What deeper truths awaited beyond the dishes they dared to serve? Tom took a deep breath, his grip tightening involuntarily around the knife's handle as he methodically diced onions. Each chop echoed in the cozy kitchen, a subtle reminder of the time slipping away until they would face their audience. The rhythmic motion was almost a meditation, a grounding exercise amidst the swirling insecurities lurking just beneath the surface. As he turned to the basil leaves, he caught Emily's gaze. She was kneading dough with focused determination, each fold an emblem of her commitment to their shared endeavor. The sunlight illuminated her features, washed in hues of anticipation, and for a fleeting moment, Tom wondered if she sensed the tremors of doubt rattling in his core. "Let's do this," he finally said, shaking off his darker thoughts. "Together." The commitment to their collaboration revitalized his spirit, but doubts quickly crept back in. Was he enough today? Such affirmations felt inadequate against the litany of insecurities he had long lived with. He forced himself to reflect on what compelled him to participate in the first place. It was intent that originated from a longing for authenticity, yet every fiber of his being screamed to tread carefully. As their work continued, so did the discussions about their families, growing more poignant with each shared anecdote. Tom observed Emily's joy as she relayed tales of baking alongside her grandmother, her eyes sparkling with vivid memory. The sweetness of those shared experiences flowed like honey, establishing a growing bond. Those stories stitched together their lives, further igniting Tom's own memories, lines of legacy weaving through the fabric of who he was. "Are you nervous?" Emily asked suddenly, her expression sincere. "About what we'll reveal?" "Nervous doesn't even cover it," he half laughed, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his facade. "But I think it's important to push through that." "Push through it?" she echoed, brow raised. "What if we dive too deep? What if we uncover something intended to be buried?" The genuine concern behind her question pricked at his consciousness. He had buried secrets, emotions he had tucked away under layers of reason and fear. Numbers on a scoreboard couldn't quantify those experiences, but neither could silence. "That's why it makes sense," Tom eventually said, forcing eye contact. "We can't only talk about the happy parts. Life isn't like that. It's a blend." Emily nodded, clearly processing his words. While she softly returned to rolling out the dough, Tom couldn't help making a silent pact with himself. He wouldn't shy away from confronting his own muddied past when the time came to share the lasagna story. As the meal progressed, an uninvited thought seeped into his mind. What if people laughed? What if they didn't understand, or worse, judged him for his vulnerabilities? Each doubt tangled with growing excitement, forming a confusing knot that felt heavier every second. Tom paused, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel, contemplating his next move in this precarious emotional chess game. Vulnerability could cost him dearly. What if he wasn't ready for the conversation? What if he opened a door to a past that felt more like a prison than a lesson? He feigned composure, moving as steadily as he could while the metaphorical walls loomed large. What was his choice? To stand between hope and hesitation was a balance too delicate. In this moment, he felt the weight of discovery pressing upon him, urging him to confront what had long been unexamined. "Emily," he said, voice steady, "when we share, let's promise to hold space for each other. Whatever comes up, we'll face it together, right?" She paused, her eyes meeting his with an understanding that made his heart flutter. "Absolutely, we're in this as a team." That conviction resonated, but a new anxiety unfurled within him. In revealing their stories, what truths would really emerge? Would they be able to conquer the emotional labyrinth before them? With shared determination mingling in the air, Tom returned to his chopping, mulling over the challenges ahead. The blend of fear and courage sparked a sensation he hadn't felt in years, a possibility for growth, acceptance, and perhaps even healing. But the maybes collided with gut-wrenching could-bes, each one more daunting than the last. And by the time they prepped their dishes for a final presentation, Tom couldn't escape the looming question. Was he ready to confront what lay beneath the surface, even if it shattered the comfortable illusion he had built? It was time to find out. As they neared completion of their dishes, Tom felt the kitchen's warmth hug him like an old friend, yet the air crackled with the potential for discomfort. The pasta was layered, the sauce simmering with bold flavors, but the thought of laying bare his true self troubled him more than the culinary challenge. Each moment leading up to their presentation seemed eternal, expanding in his mind as he mentally rehearsed the pivotal stories he planned to reveal. Emily glanced over at him, wiping her hands on her apron. Confusion met with concern. "You okay?" she asked, offering a small smile. "Yeah, just thinking through everything," Tom replied, clenching his fists subtly at his sides. The tolling bells of anxiety reverberated in his chest. He hesitated, feeling the weight of his silence push against the walls of their rapport. The conversation loomed like an uninvited guest. He watched Emily's focused demeanor, a stark contrast to his pulsating inner chaos. This was the moment he had sought, and yet he stood on the precipice of vulnerability, teetering between the past and a future he could scarcely imagine. Deep down, he yearned for connection, for acceptance, and yet the instinct to conceal felt like second nature. "Do you ever feel like we're playing a part?" he suddenly blurted, the words spilling out before he could censor them. "Like maybe we're trying to impress people rather than just being ourselves?" Emily's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? This isn't about impressing anyone. It's about sharing who we are, even the messy bits. You know that." A part of him wanted to retreat. Safety seemed infinitely more appealing than risking exposure. But another part remembered the pact they had just made. He had to explore that territory. I guess I'm worried my messy bits are just too messy," he admitted, his throat tightening as he spoke. "Good," Emily replied firmly. "Bring your messy bits. The truth is what connects us." She paused, her expression earnest. "We can't all have perfect little stories. That's not real life. I mean, look at us. We're here because we want to share, not to compete." Her words hit him squarely in the chest. The notion of authenticity stirred in him, calling out to be acknowledged. Childhood memories of family dinners surfaced, where happy masks hid tensions simmering just below the surface. Those evenings, painted with laughter, yet filled with unspoken words, mirrored his current emotions, so close to happiness but laced with worry. "Okay then," he said, a reluctant smile breaking through his tension. "It's time for the messy bits." With renewed intention, Tom rose to the challenge. As they finished plating their dishes, he found a strange comfort in the chaos of their preparations. The mixture of scents and the shared laughter lightened his heart. The kitchen wasn't merely about food or recipes. It transformed into a sanctuary, a space for release and revelation. Finally, standing before the table, the culmination of their efforts and personal histories felt simultaneously overwhelming and exhilarating. The moment was at hand, and Tom sensed the thick tension in the air, the anticipation of unveiling true selves. "Just remember," Emily said softly, her eyes steady on him, "whatever you say tonight, know that you're not alone." The sincerity in her voice resonated deep within him, but as they began to present, a flood of panic washed over Tom. He wrestled with the urge to pull back, to retreat behind the guise of humor and charm that had long shielded him. Did he really want to place his vulnerabilities out there for all to see? "Let's make a pact, Emily," he began, grounding his resolve. "Whatever I say, promise me you won't let me hide. I need you to hold me to it." "Of course," she replied, determination glaring in her gaze. "We'll support each other." For the first time in days, Tom felt the stirrings of confidence through the tangled emotions. This was more than just a presentation. It was a defining moment. As the evening continued to unfold, one question pulsed through his mind. If he stepped into the light with all his shadows, what revelations awaited him? With his heart pounding and uncertainties swirling, it was time to expose the layers of his life, an endeavor that might either liberate him or tether him deeper into the constraints of his past. There, in that moment, he understood. To evolve, he had to confront his truth, no matter where it might lead. The moment arrived with palpable tension. As Tom looked out at the small gathering before them, each face blurred in his anxious mind, he grappled with the weight of possible judgment. The memories of laughter and warmth from the kitchen dimmed, replaced by a haunting echo of doubts and insecurities. This was not simply a culinary presentation, it was an unveiling of the dense layers of himself, a leap into vulnerability. Emily initiated the presentation, her voice steady as she detailed the passion behind their dish. Tom admired her composure, a stark contrast to the storm churning within him. He felt the shift in energy as the audience leaned in, intrigued by what they had to share. And in that moment, the whispered promises of honesty buzzed at the edge of his consciousness. When it came time for him to speak, his throat tightened. He prepared to weave together the threads of his story, but the expectation felt insurmountable. What if they didn't connect with him? What if his truth didn't resonate? Did he dare reveal the parts of himself that had been locked away? He took a breath, collecting his thoughts, attempting to summon courage from the wave of excitement rippling through Emily. "What we've prepared tonight," he began, forcing his voice to remain even, "is a reflection of who we are. The flavors are intertwined with our experiences." The words felt sticky in his mouth, and he braced himself. "You see, there was a time in my life when everything was perfect on the surface, or at least that was how it looked to the outside world. I grew up in a family that appeared happy, but underneath we were struggling with our own shadows." With every word, the familiar thrum of vulnerability flared in his chest, yet the impulse to retreat dulled under the rush of his own narrative. His voice soaked with authenticity, he shared stories of disappointment and the longing for approval that had dictated many of his choices. He spoke about the pressure of meeting expectations and the unsettling realization of having built walls instead of bridges, all while seeking validation. Silence enveloped the room, but for the soft clinking of forks, and he could see Emily nodding along, her understanding a balm to his worn spirit. Invigorated, he pressed on. "But it wasn't until I stepped into this kitchen, this magical messiness of cooking with someone who gets it, that I began to embrace those imperfect parts. I realized I don't need a facade to share my story." As he wrapped up his thoughts, he risked a glance around the room, scanning for reactions. Eyes were wide, some soft with empathy, while others reflected contemplation. The air buzzed with a charged intimacy that made his vulnerability feel like a shared endeavor. "None of us are perfect," he concluded, gauging how his heart swelled at the thought of encouraging others instead of hiding behind masks. And it's okay to lean into our mess, because that's where connection and understanding truly begin. He stepped back, letting the weight of his truth settle like a blessing upon the gathering. Applause broke out, and for a moment Tom basked in the relief of his unguardedness, the first taste of liberation he had longed for. But as the exhilaration coursed through him, an unsettling thought loomed. Was this newfound openness genuine, or had it merely scratched the surface? He caught Emily's eye, admiration gleaming in her expression. But his internal whispering persisted. Would he be able to sustain this level of truth moving forward? As the audience began to reflect on their own experiences, something shifted in Tom. A recognition that true personal development lay not just in moments of honesty, but also in the consistency of living that honesty. As conversations ignited around the table, the earlier tension morphed into camaraderie. But amid the flutter of newfound confidence, a question nagged at the rim of his consciousness, sharper now than ever before. What if his willingness to expose his vulnerabilities not only drew others in, but also unraveled parts of himself he wasn't ready to confront? The evening pressed onward, and as words danced in the air like the strains of a forgotten melody, Tom found himself at a crossroads he hadn't anticipated. The approachability of authenticity met the daunting truth of his unresolved past. What would it take for him to truly embrace his messy bits without fear? For now, the journey remained cloaked in uncertainty, and Tom's next step appeared both exhilarating and terrifying. The energy of the evening shifted, but not without an undercurrent of trepidation. As meaningful connections began to sprout like wildflowers among the audience, Tom felt a nagging thread tugging at him, urging him to explore the depth of those feelings he'd unearthed. The applause still echoed in his ears, yet it was beginning to feel distant, less celebratory, and more like a countdown. He noticed Emily engaging with the audience, her laughter mingling with genuine inquiries. About the dish, a small knot began to form in Tom's stomach. He was proud of his contribution, but the thought of maintaining authenticity without retreating into old patterns was an unsettling prospect. The applause had felt validating, but the questions of his past loomed ominously, ready to stifle his progress. Tom excused himself from the group, seeking solace in a quieter corner of the venue. The cutlery clanked, voices danced in the air, and the warmth of camaraderie buzzed through the room. But he felt an unsettling isolation creeping over him. He glanced down, tracing the path of his fingers over the surface of the table, contemplating how easy it would be to slip back into the shadows. Yet, he had just taken a major step into the light, hadn't he? Internal conflict surged. Was he brave enough to process what it meant to truly share his story? With determination rising in him, Tom took a deep breath. The kitchen was where he had genuinely begun to confront his vulnerabilities, where he had felt alive amidst the chaos of flavors and techniques. He was determined not to forsake the progress he'd made. The idea of returning to the past, to the familiar isolation, was a route he was resolutely prepared to avoid. As he returned to the crowd, he caught snippets of personal stories being exchanged. One guest spoke of a family dinner where love was served alongside a burnt roast. Another mentioned the awkwardness of trying to impress someone special only to trip over an untied shoelace. Tom chuckled softly. He could relate, and felt a pull to share again, but this time with a greater sense of purpose. "Isn't it fascinating," he found himself saying, his voice tentative yet steady, "how the most imperfect moments often hold our greatest connections?" Eyes shifted toward him. A man in the front nodded enthusiastically. "Right, our disasters seem to make the best stories later." Tom felt emboldened. "Exactly. Maybe it's time we embrace the mess. It seems to be where we find our truths." He paused, gauging reactions, soaked in the gravity of his words. The need for connection surged through him again as he realized that conversation, vulnerability, and honesty could be practiced and honed as skills, as brave choices, rather than mere fleeting moments. After a few heartfelt exchanges, he decided to confront unresolved battles that had lingered in the shadows. Could he muster the courage to face the weights he had carried, including his lingering insecurities tied to his family? What if he didn't step forward into that conversation? What if letting go felt more fulfilling than he ever anticipated, unleashing possibilities of deeper understanding? He sensed the time had come to put thoughts into action. drawing a mental map of how to navigate through past feelings without letting them eclipse his newfound voice. Tom realized he needed to explore these facets of himself, not only for his sake, but also for those who might find solace. His words. Just as he felt clarity surfacing, a wave of uncertainty hit. Could he pursue this deeper honesty and still stand firm on the emotional ground? The question echoed in his mind, threatening to render him immobile again. Determined to keep the momentum going, Tom charged ahead, feeling both dread and thrill at what lay beyond the next moment. What skeletons did he still need to confront? Was it really possible to embrace his past while forging ahead with newfound authenticity? With every heartbeat resonating with the urgency to unearth the truths he had hidden for so long, Tom knew he was poised on the brink of something greater. But would he find the strength to face what awaited him, or would the shadows claim him back? The final preparations were complete, and the kitchen thrummed with anticipation. Tom stood amidst the tantalizing sense of the dishes he and Emily had crafted, their laughter still echoing in his mind, a reminder of the bond he had nearly lost to envy. The evening ahead was more than just a chance to showcase their culinary talents. It was an opportunity to redefine success and authenticity on their own terms. As they took their places before the audience, Tom felt a surge of determination coursing through him. He was ready to share the messy truths that had shaped his journey, acknowledging finally that these truths mattered just as much as the successes. The words began to flow, each sentence a bridge leading him closer to vulnerability, a bridge that had been rebuilt under the warmth of shared experiences. I remember when I first attempted to create my own version of Mom's lasagna, Tom began, a smile mingling with the nerves. It was a complete disaster. Burnt edges, forgotten layers, and arguments with the oven. Laughter peppered the room, and for the first time he felt the weight of anxiety lift. But it was also the first time I realized that cooking isn't just about perfect execution. It's about connection. It's the moments spent kneading dough alongside family, battling over spices, and sharing the warmth around the table. His eyes met Emily's, and he could see her understanding reflected back at him. That shared warmth, the understanding, became a testament to their resilience. In this moment, Tom recognized the strength drawn from vulnerability, and he continued, recounting how his fear of inadequacy had long held him hostage, wanting to hide his aspirations behind safe walls. It took me too long to realize that these walls only serve to protect us from ourselves, he said, his voice firm and clear. It's not about being overshadowed by another success. It's about learning to celebrate one another while forging our individuality. There was a ripple of applause, but it felt different to him now, a shared recognition of struggle, of journey, and aspiration. The acknowledgement he had sought finally took root, and he expanded on the theme of connection, weaving in stories from the audience, drawing parallels with theirs. Experiences. The laughter and nodding heads told him that he wasn't just speaking, he was engaging. As he finished his story, a burst of pride welled up within him. Tom had been afraid to confront vulnerability, yet here he was, using it to forge connections, noting that every flop in the kitchen echoed a deeper lesson in life. The realization that authenticity drew people in instead of pushing them away filled him with solid confidence. In the days that followed, there was no retreat. Success for Tom no longer meant accolades received in isolation. It meant forging bonds, challenging fears, and contributing to a conversation that spanned deeper than culinary arts. Emily proposed incorporating more community involvement into their culinary ventures, sharing not only food, but also hope and connection with those who had felt their stories echo in their own. The recognition they received was as profound as his personal achievements. Emails flooded in, gratitude pouring from faces touched by their vulnerability, and the pair was invited to collaborate with local organizations, building a series of cooking classes that emphasized embracing imperfection, the ultimate culinary metaphor. This was Tom's time. He stood at the helm with a newfound strength, a view into a future rich with possibilities. The opportunity to teach others to embrace their messy bits became a passion project, yielding more fulfillment than he ever imagined. As he embraced this new path, Tom understood that personal growth wasn't confined to the kitchen. It branched out, touching lives with the essence of shared stories and experiences. He had proved that vulnerability could lead to empowerment, illuminating a path for others to follow. Success, he mused one evening, a smile dancing across his lips as he watched Emily interact enthusiastically with a group of new students, isn't a solitary pursuit. Their laughter echoed through the open space, filling it with warmth and community. He achieved what once seemed elusive, a sense of purpose and belonging, founded not on competition, but on collaboration. Tom had conquered self-doubt and unearthed the true recipe for success: authenticity, connection, and a willingness to share not just food, but the very essence of who they were. Join Tom and Emily on their inspiring journey to empower others through culinary art. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive emotional stories that reveal profound transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and share your thoughts in the comments about Tom's incredible evolution and theories on storytelling. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. The importance of support within the community matters, and only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand it.